All right, so it's time, and welcome everyone for Power Automate Desktop session. My name is Mohamed Derhalli, and I'll be walking you through introduction, I would say, to Power Automate Desktop and why we would want to use it. So first of all, thanks to all our sponsors for making this event possible. Like, without sponsors, we wouldn't be able to, like the organizers wouldn't be able to spend so much time in order to do these things, the prizes and so on. So please go check out their services after this session. It would be much appreciated. If you want to participate in a contest and win some prizes, this is the time. So if you can attend as many sessions as possible and answer as many questions as possible from these sessions, so please you can scan the QR code, provide us some feedback, and participate in the quiz. All right. So let's get started with Power Automate Desktop and what it's all about. So Bill Gates said once that the first rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. The second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify inefficiency. So what do we understand of this? We understand that if you're going to be able to add automation in your daily tasks, if you can facilitate that, then we're going to be more efficient. And also Mark Cuban said automation is going to cause unemployment and we need to prepare for it. So that means automation is coming whether we like it or not. We're going to have some automation, whether it's software, whether it's hardware, we're going to have automation. So, and you can just like resist it. It's going to be there. So you better like learn it as soon as possible rather than just like be the last one to know about it. And we're going to discuss in this session, we're going to discuss Power Automate Desktop, which is a tool provided by Microsoft to enable us to do RPA, robotic process automation, on top of our laptops, and we're going to check how that's done. So a little bit about myself. My name is Mohamed Derhalli. I'm a solutions architect at Cyclotron. You can reach out to me at Mohamed Derhalli on Twitter or on LinkedIn. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Office Apps and Services. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer as well, and Certified Scrum Master and Product Owner. All right. So let's talk about robotic process automation, what it is. So the definition is it's a technology that mimics the way humans interact with software to perform high volume, repeatable tasks. So notice that the last two sentences, it's a high volume and repeatable tasks. So if you have so many tasks to do, if you have many things that you want to achieve and it's repeatable, then that's going to like qualify it to becoming something that you can automate with a process. So you have this assistant that's going to help you out. Imagine that you're hiring someone to do these high volume repeatable tasks. So that one can be a bot living on your laptop that's going to do these things for you. So imagine that you have a process every day. You have to open some files, copy stuff all over the place, send emails, and so on and so on. So you can automate this process that you do, and that takes like so many hours of you every day, and it's repeatable that you do on a daily basis. You can just automate it with an RPA technology. Now, sometimes you're going to hear the term DPA. So what is DPA and how it's different from RPA? So let's talk first about RPA itself. When I'm talking about RPA, it has two phases. So one phase is it's attended. When I say attended is you run the process on your computer and you're just going to watch it running on your computer. It can ask you for an input. So it can ask you for like a dialogue that you can just say, add some parameters, submit, or it's going to ask you for a yes, no questions, or it's going to ask you for some kind of an input. And that's the attended. So you're actually sitting there and it's working for you and you might interact with it. The other part is the unattended. So the bot itself is going to be running on a server that you're not accessing in the first place, you're not signed into, and it's going to run somewhere else unattended. So you have these two phases. The DPA part is the attended part. So when you hear the term DPA, think of the attended part of the RPA. but RPA is like the two faces, the attended and the unattended. Now we're talking about Power Automate Desktop, right? But it's not the only player in the market out there. So we have Uipath, we have Blue Prism, so we have other tools that are there. But Power Automate Desktop is the newest one there. So in order for us to talk about Power Automate Desktop, let's just have some history, to cover some history about the tool itself. So it was developed by Softomotive it was acquired by Microsoft from Softomotive in May 2020. So Softomotive is the original company that actually was developing this tool. And the idea from Microsoft is they saw that they're having automation from Power Automate Online or Power Automate Cloud, and they wanted to have a new member added to the Power Platform suite. So they have the Power Automate Desktop itself. Now, in September 2020, it was announced to be in preview in Microsoft Ignite, and December 2020, it went GA, so it was general available. And in March 2021, Microsoft announced that it's going to be available for free for Windows 10 users and Windows 11 users as well. Now, when we say it's free, we need to talk about the license because it's free and not free at the same time. So we'll need to talk about when do you need to pay for it. So we said that it's going to be free. And you know that there is a tool, Power Automate Cloud. So if you want to have this orchestration from Power Automate Cloud to communicate with Power Automate Desktop, if you want to have that communication, then you'll need to get a license. So it's free as long as you're going to use it on your computer. So you do automation for stuff locally on your computer. Once you want to communicate with Power Automate in the cloud to, for example, send stuff to SharePoint, communicate with Teams, whatever you want to deal with Power Automate Cloud, then that's when you need a license. So you can get a license by having a per user plan, and that's going to give you the attended license of RPA, and that's going to be $40 a month per user. And Microsoft right now, they have a deal for a limited time for $15 a month per user. And that's only if you purchase 5K licenses of this per user plan. So you're going to get it for 15. Otherwise, you'll need to pay $4.50 if you have less than 5K users, right? Now, let's say that you want to use the unattended. So you want to have it running on a server that you're not actually signed into. So in that case, you're going to have to pay $150 per bot a month, right? So this is how it can be licensed using these plans. Now we talked about the attended and unattended, and we talked about that the attended is when you're actually watching the process running and you can interfere. It's going to ask you for some questions, you can answer, and so on and so on. And the unattended is when it's running on its own server somewhere, you're not signed into the machine, and it's going to do the work on your behalf, and you don't have to interact with it. So these are the attended and unattended. Now, to get started with Power Automate Desktop, you can download it directly from Microsoft download site, or you can download it from flow.microsoft.com, or which is like the other URL, powerautomate.microsoft.com. So you can download it from both ends. And in order to set it up, once you download it, you can just go through the wizard, the installation wizard. And notice that here, when we do the installation, notice that we have Edge extension, and we have Chrome as well extension. And if you want to download if you're using Firefox, you can download it also directly from the Microsoft's website in order to install these extensions. And we're going to see why we need these extensions, because there's something in Power Automate Desktop that's called the concept of recording. So let's say that I want to do some actions on a web page, and I want the bot to mimic these actions. So in order to do that, I will need to do some stuff on my browser, record it, and then it's going to turn into actions in Power Automate Desktop. And we're going to see how that's done. Because like in Power Automate Desktop, when you're creating the flow itself, it's like Power Automate Cloud. You're doing in a declarative way. So you drag drop the actions, and you just author your flow that way. However, with the recording, you can record your steps, and it's going to generate these actions for you. and we're going to see how it's done. So we choose to install the extensions, and we just install it. And here's in Chrome where it's asking us to add the Power Automate extension to our browser. Next, we'll need to sign in, and we're going to be ready to work on our bot. So the types of automations that we have the web automation and we have the desktop. So as I mentioned, like you can automate web procedures using web actions. So you can see that we have a bunch of actions dedicated for the web, and we will also have the web recorder, and we can also automate desktop actions. So I can run the command line, I can open Excel files, I can do all sorts of things on a desktop itself, and I can have a recorder for these actions as well, right? Now, that's pretty much it for the slides. We're just going to spend the whole session, the rest of the session, getting into demos, and let's get into it. Because who likes slides anyway? So I'll just go to my Power Automate desktop after it's installed. And one thing I want to mention to you, which is now in my environment right here, or even in any environment, you're going to have Power Automate desktop, right? But you're going to have also Power Automate cloud. So in order for Power Automate cloud to communicate with Power Automate desktop, it doesn't have access to it, right? Like not like people from the outside, like from the world, they're not going to be able to access your machine just like that. So we'll need to have some kind of a tunnel that's opened from the cloud to our machine in order for Power Automate cloud to communicate with our machine. And that tunnel that we're talking about is called a gateway. So if you've used Power Apps or Power Automate, you know that you can install a gateway on an on-prem machine in order to allow Power Automate or Power Apps to communicate with that machine. And that's the same case that we have right here. So you can install a gateway on your computer in order for Power Automate Cloud to communicate with your Power Automate desktop. However, a nice thing that Microsoft released, which is if you have your machine sitting in Azure, so you can let Power Automate Cloud just communicate with your machine right away. So for example, right now, I have this machine, which is living in Azure, and I don't need to use a gateway to communicate with Power Automate. So just to show you something, what I'm going to do is I'll go to data and I'll go to gateway right here. And I'll show you something. I don't have any gateway installed in my environment. So you're going to see I have nothing. However, if I go to monitor, I can see that I have, this is like I'm in Power Automate online, and I can see that I have a machine. And in case you have like a bunch of machines that are open, you're going to see your machines listed right here, right? And if I go to machine groups, so the machine groups consider it as a load balancing. So I can have a bunch of machines available. And when I make request from Power Automate Cloud to Power Automate Desktop, a machine is just going to volunteer and is going to accept that request, is going to go along with it. And if I make another request from Power Automate Desktop and I ask from Power Automate Cloud and I ask Power Automate Desktop to do something for me, another machine is just going to volunteer and it's going to do it for me. So this is the idea of having a machine group. Now I have my machine sitting right here. And as you can see that I didn't use a gateway in order to connect to my machines. So it's just going to pick it up because I'm signed in here with the same account, right? So what we see right here is called a console. And this is when you install Power Automate Desktop, you're going to see the console right there. I can create a new flow, and they're called flows, just like in Power Automate Cloud. They're called flows. And I can just create a new one. I already have existing ones. What I can do is I can run it right away. I can edit the flow itself. I can rename it or delete it. So let's take an example. Let's start with this one. Let's start with the time off. So I'll just edit this one and let's see. So let's say that I created this flow I'm going to see the designer right now. So you go from the console, you create your flow from the console, then you go to the the designer. Let's wait. So here I am in the designer. On the left hand side, you're going to see all the actions, and you can search for the actions. For example, if I'm interested in CMD, so I can see all the actions that are related to the command line. I can open a new CMD command, I can close it, and so on and so on. If I'm interested in Excel, Excel actions, I can see them right here. So for example, this action, the first one that I have right here in the canvas, right here in this area, is attached to Excel, to running Excel, which means that I have an Excel file that should already be running, which I have right here, the time off, and it's going to just attach itself to it. And how I added this one was, you can just get this action, drag drop it where you want, right? And it's going to open a dialog for you. So here you can just say, I can select a file that's already existing, and it's going to pick up that there's an Excel file already open, and you can just choose it. When you pick the file, whatever you want, it's going to be translated as a variable in your flow itself. So I can reference to this Excel file using this variable, right? So which is what I have done right here. Now when I close this one, because I haven't saved it, this new action that I added is going to be gone because I haven't saved it yet. So we're going to stick with the existing one that I have. I can double click on this one and see what's going on. And I can see that's going to save the value in this variable. Now, what are these variables? On the right-hand side, I can see all the variables that I have. So I can see that I have a variable called Excel instance, first free column, first row, and button pressed. So now we know where this one came from this action. So the actions are going to generate the variables for me, right? Now I have another action that says get first free column and row, which you're going to be able to see it exists right there. So same thing, I can just drag drop this one. And when I drag drop this one, it will pick up in a smart way. It will know that I have this Excel file, a reference to it, and it's going to be the input for this process. The output is going to be these two variables. So here I have first free column and first row. Because I already have two variables here with the same name, so I just appended the two to the end of the variable names. But I don't need this action because I already have one. So I have this action, and it's going to store the variables in the values in these variables. So basically what this does is it's going to see this Excel file, and it's going to see, okay, the first free row is going to be number 2, and the first free column is going to be E, this one. And it's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be number 5. So number 5 and 2 are going to be stored in this first free column and first free row. Now what I'm doing is I'm writing a value. And how I'm going to run this flow right now, as you're going to see, I'm going to run it from Power Automate Cloud. So what I'm going to do, I have a button flow in Cloud. I'm just going to run it, provide it with some information. This information is going to come here as an input variable. So these variables that you see in the flow variables are auto-generated by the actions that take place here. But you can define your own variables right here and define if they're going to be output variables or input variables. For example, this one, this variable right here is defined as an output variable. So this is what's going to be returned to Power Automate Cloud. This one, so here what I'm doing is right click and edit. This one is an input variable. So it's an input variable. The variable name inside my flow is going to be first name. External name, what Power Automate Cloud is going to see it from the cloud is going to see it as first name, right? Same thing with the last name. What's going to be the value of this in my flow itself is going to be the variable name, but Power Automate Cloud is going to see it as last name, right? So here, basically what I'm doing is I'm writing to the Excel file. I'm writing the value of first name, whatever I'm getting from the cloud. In this exact location, I'm writing it in column A, first free row, which is basically is going to get it right here. Now I'm doing the same step for the last name. Get me that value from the cloud, put it in B, first free row, right there. And same thing with the time off. I'm going to just put it in C. Then what I'm doing is I'm giving a prompt to the user, display message. And if you search for display, you're going to see that you have display message, display input, and so on. So you have like a bunch of these. I'm using the display message. And here you can have input buttons. So you can have buttons that are going to store the exact value, whatever you want. So I have yes and no. And the result that you're going to choose from yes and no is going to be stored in this variable. So you see like there is a pattern right here. You have actions. The actions are going to generate variables for you that you're going to use wherever you want. So whenever I click on yes and no, the yes and no is going to be stored in this one, which we have discussed right here, which covers all of our variables so far. So now I display a variable to a message to the user, and you notice that the message itself consists of variables. So whenever you see percentage something percentage, that's a variable. You can type it by hand. So I can just say first name, something like this, if you remember. But because there is no IntelliSense, that's going to help you out. Or you can just click on this X and choose the variable that you need, and it will just write it down for you. So you can have it the way you want. So here I'm just saying first name, last name, for example, Mohamed Derhalli, and has requested, and the number that I'm sending in the variable in from Power Automate Cloud, approve this leave or not. And then what I'm doing right here, setting the variable, which is the output variable that's going to go back to Power Automate Cloud. I'm setting this one to be the result of what I have chosen. And then what I'm going to do, set the approval here to that value. So column D and set it to whatever I choose. So let's go to Power Automate Cloud and see how this is done. So here, request time off. Let's have a look at this one and see how it's done. So I have a button flow right here. First name, last name, number of days. I'm going to be filling these ones. And then I have the run flow. Now I chose this one. I can see all the flows that I have. So I have the time off. The mode, I want it to be attended. And here I'm just passing all the variables that I've been filling. I'll be passing them into my Power Automate. And this is an action that you have. So if you go to add an action, you're going to see that there is a section called desktop flows, and it's the first action right here. All right. Now this is going to run, and whatever result that's going to be back, I'm just going to log it right there. Right. So let's see how this works. I'm just going to make it manual, and all right. So I'll type Mohamed Derhalli and number of days 15, and let's run. And let's watch our Excel file. Let's see what's going to happen. Right now, like look, focus on the bottom. There's going to be a message that's going to be viewed to us. And let's see. Right now, this is like the attended scenario. And there it is. It went through these three actions, typed the values in my Excel. And now there's a prompt right here. Remember that message? So there's a message. Mohamed Derhalli has requested 15 days. Approve. My decision is going to be stored right here. So if I hit yes, it's going to be stored right there. And if I go to Power Automate right there, it's still waiting for the response from my machine. And let's wait for it. It's not going to take an hour, I promise. And it's done. And I can see that my response is yes, that the approval variable that I have just returned. So this is like the first demo. Let's take another demo. What do we have? All right, so I have, let's see the finance one. So let's have a look at this one. And this is the desktop recorder. I have this application that Microsoft just gives for demonstration purposes. It's just like a demo app. And what I have here is I want to automate this process. So I want to automate. Let's have a look at the flow itself. So let's look here. What I'm doing right here in my flow is I'm launching an Excel file. And again, launch. And you can see that you have a bunch of stuff. So you launch Excel, launch Outlook. So I'm launching a new Excel file. Remember in the previous flow, I had attached to an existing opened Excel file, but this time I'm just going to launch Excel. And when I launch Excel, I can just launch Excel with an empty document, or I can tell it to launch Excel and open a document. And I'm just specifying the path to be for this document, which exists on in this location. So I'm just specifying that one. Now we have the Excel file open. I'm just reading data from this Excel file. So get me everything from that file. And then I'm running this application that exists right here. What I want to automate in this case, so let's go to actually that file and show you the structure so we know what we want to automate in that tool. So here I have account name, I have a contact and an email. So for example, Microsoft, the contact and an email. I want to loop through all of this and submit a new item in that desktop application right here. So basically what I want to do is I want to click on accounts. I want to hit new account and value primary contact Mohamed and something like this, right? And when I'm done, I want to hit save and add that new record, right? For every single step. So how I did this right here is you can see that I have a bunch of actions. However, I didn't do all of these actions in a declarative way like drag drop, how we were doing that earlier. I didn't do it this way. Only the first three actions, I did it that way. So I had, for example, application, I had the run application drag drop, and I submitted the configuration for that action. However, for this one, for the for each, I didn't do it this way. So let me show you first how it's working, and then let me show you how I created these ones. So I'm just going to run it. It will go and launch the Excel file for me, read the data. It will click accounts, new. It's going to start typing stuff on its own, hitting save, and next one, and so on. So imagine that you have 1,000 records like that. It will just go ahead and do it for you. But how I did that is, you see this button right here called Desktop Recorder. I wanted to record the steps that I'm doing in my tool right here, and then it will generate these actions for me, right? So let's see how this is done. I'm going to click on this Desktop Recorder, and I'm just going to take it on the right-hand side, and I will say start recording. Now, whatever I click right here, whatever I do is going to be recorded as actions on the right-hand side. So I'm going to click on this accounts. I clicked twice, so I'll need to delete one. So now I clicked on accounts. And you see that how it's recognizing where you're clicking. Now I'm going to click on this one, new record, and it recognized this action. Now I'm just going to something, hit tab, and something else, hit another tab, email, and I will go here and click on this one. Now it recorded all the steps for me. What I'm going to do right now is I'll just hit finish. Now, if we go back to our Power Automate, it inserted these steps for us, because what happens is Power Automate inserts steps on top of the one that you selected. So for example, if I had this one selected and let's say, for example, I copy this step, right? If I copy this step and I select this one and Control V to paste, it will just paste that step on top of this one. And this is the reason why it pasted these things in this location, right? So I have these steps, and you're going to see that it's surrounded by these ones. And by the way, like if you want to do something you can have a comment. So I can have a comment right here. And in the comment, I can just say, going to run Excel right here. Something like this, just so you can see what what's going on. So you can have comments to describe a group of actions together. Now, what I'm having here is I want to execute this step for every single row in my Excel. So what I'm going to do is replicate what I'm having right there. So replicate the for each. So you can have an action called for each. And I'm just going to drop this one right here. And I want something to iterate on, which is going to be the Excel data that I extracted from my Excel file. So I'm just going to get my Excel data, and I'm just going to loop through whatever is in Excel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one, push it inside. So I have my first action, and let's see if this is going to work. So I'm just going to drag drop this one here. And yeah, it worked. Sometimes like it would glitch and it would take the whole for each down. But yeah, so now we have these ones here. Now I don't want to have these things like something else, email. These are like the static stuff I wrote in my when I was preparing it. However, I want to have whatever value I'm having from this one. So in this case, I'll double click on this one, and I want to use the current item 2, right? But I don't want like the current item is the whole row. I want only this value. I want the account. So what I'm going to do is within the variable itself, I'm going to open a bracket and say I want the account itself, right? And this is going to give me the account value of the current item, which is this one. If I want to have the contact, I'll type contact here, contact, and so on and so on. And this is how you're going to be able to loop through it. And to see our process, like the one that we saw working in the demo, here you see, I'm just populating, I'm just using this one as a value for what I'm filling in the populate text field in a window. I'm using the account. And for this one, I'm using the contact. And for this one, I'm using, you might be like you might be tempted to do something like this, but it's not the right way. You might be like, oh, this is the variable, so after the variable, I'm going to do it like this. No, it's not how it works, right? So this is how I was able to do a desktop recorder and do a desktop application. Let's look at a crazy example, how to automate SharePoint itself, like how you can read from Excel, go open SharePoint, and just insert items in SharePoint. So I would go here, and here I have this list, right? So in this list, it's an issue list. And if I click on new, I see the issue title, the priority, status, assigned to, like some fields that I can just fill out, right? And here I'm just using a column for the view formatting in order to just show stuff based on the priority and the status and so on. But let's have a look at, I'm just going to close this flow and this one. Don't save. And I'll go back to the console. And here I have this one, issue tracker flow. So let's open that one. And let's have a look what it does. So this, basically, I just want to know where I stored the file. I think I stored it on the desktop. Yep. So on the desktop, I have this issues list, Excel file. So it has a bunch of issues, right? And I have assigned to, I have logged by, status, priority, and description, etc., etc. So I have all of these issues. What I want to do is I want to log these into SharePoint. So I didn't do it in the web recorder. And the reason why I didn't do that is, here's the thing. When you do recording, Power Automate Desktop is going to use stuff like, if you're familiar with CSS, it's going to be like selectors. So it's going to depend on some selectors in the HTML elements themselves. However, with SharePoint, the CSS classes, like the CSS themselves, are auto-generated. So if you do it once, maybe come back next day after an hour, and so on, refresh the page, different class names, right? It's auto-generated by SharePoint. So you're not. It's going to be super hard to do a web recorder for it. You can do a web recorder for a solution that you built, that you know the exact class name is going to be that, and you can do a web recorder for it. However, for SharePoint, it's going to be a little bit hard. So I'll show you what I did. So first of all, I launched this Excel, and same thing. I get the first free row and column from this one, and I'm reading the values. However, just to show you how we read the values in a different way, rather than using this one as in other examples I showed, I'm reading from the first column is going to be A, first row is going to be 1, just to show like a different way how you can do it. So first column is this one, and first row is this one. So I'm reading basically from name right here. And I'm saying the end column is going to be the first free column minus 1. So the first free column is this one minus 1. So I'm going to end up here. And the last row is going to be the first free row minus 1 here. So I'm selecting basically all of this, right? And here I'm just saying first line of range contains column names. So it can exclude this one for me if you go to the advanced. So I'm just selecting everything. Again, we have it in Excel data. And I just got my values. I don't need Excel. So I'm just closing Excel right here. Next, I'm launching Edge on this URL. And now what I'm doing for every Excel data, I'm doing something a little bit sneaky, which is I'm moving the mouse to this exact location on my end. So I'm moving the mouse here. Then I'm sending a mouse click. So how I'm moving the mouse, you have all of these mouse actions. So I'm moving the mouse there. If I double click on this one, see what it tells you? It tells you Control Shift, and it's going to pick the new location for you. So right now, if I hit Control Shift somewhere, it's gonna pick the value that I see. So right now, let's go there, Control Shift, and it updated these two values for me. If I go here, Control Shift, it updated these ones, right? And if I go there, hit Control Shift, it's going to give me new values. So right now, these are the new values. So I just go there, Control Shift, and this is where my mouse is going to move, send mouse click, then wait for a second, then move the mouse. So basically, it's going to open this one. Wait a second, move the mouse here, and I'm just waiting for another second in case SharePoint takes a little bit to load. And then I'm clicking here, and then I'm sending a key, which is the first name. Then I'm moving the mouse again somewhere else, which is this time is going to be, I think it was priority. And then I'm sending, it was the description. So the description, and I'm sending a key, and so on, and so on, and so on. So basically all what you see right here is just moving the mouse, sending a mouse click, typing something. And here I'm just made it easier for myself to move mouse to priority field, move mouse to status field, assign to, and so on, and so on, and so on. And this is how it works basically. So let's see how it works. Hopefully we don't have any SharePoint issues. Let's see. It went to new, issue 1, started inserting stuff. And there we go. And this is how it's gonna keep on inserting the values, right? So just a way to automate SharePoint if you're into these things. Yeah. What I'm going to do is what I did was I switched to Power Automate Desktop and then Shift F5 to stop the debugging, like to stop running for this one. And by the way, if you want to debug something, you can just you can hit click here in this area, and it's going to have a breakpoint for you. So for example, you can see that these are the values that I have, but if I run, or let's say like I go to this area, run, it will run everything, launch, and it's going to stop the execution right here. So I can just analyze my variables right here in this area. And then I can just go to the next action, or I can just stop or shift F5, and that's going to stop the running process for me. Now for the last demo, I'll show you another Flow cloud with Power Automate desktop integration. And this is like something also like with SharePoint, how you can create SharePoint sites. Like this is going to be super useful if you're familiar with PNP, like the PNP PowerShell. So let's say that you have a SharePoint template somehow, and that template is done with PNP itself. So you need like to run some commands in PowerShell to go and provision SharePoint sites, provision lists, libraries, do all sorts of things. But you want to do this from Power Automate Cloud. So in this case, I'll show you in Power Automate Cloud right here. This is not the right window. Let me just close this one. And where did we lose that window? Right there. So I'll go to Power Automate, and I have provision sites. And let's go to provision sites on our end as well. Where is it? Here. Exciting stuff. So, and switch back to Power Automate Desktop Cloud. And here it is. I'm just providing site URL, site title. That's it. And here what I'm doing is, imagine that let's say that I have a drop-down for site template, or I have a drop-down for theme color, or whatever I want. And then from your mobile device, you can just run this button flow and say, okay, I want this site URL to be this site title, and I want it to be green with this list or something like that. And just send it. It's going to go to your Power Automate desktop. Power Automate desktop is going to run PowerShell script. That PowerShell script is going to just do whatever variables that are being passed. So Power Automate desktop passing values, Power Automate Cloud passing values to Power Automate desktop, Power Automate desktop passing these as parameters to your PowerShell script, right? So we're providing these two variables, and you can see that the variable titles are site title, site URL, which correspond to our variables right here. So we have the internal name without spaces, but the external, what appears in Power Automate Cloud, is this one. Now, one thing to note is I'm using PowerShell 7 because I'm using the latest version of PNP PowerShell. If you notice right here, you have PowerShell. But this PowerShell will run PowerShell 5, which is this one. It's going to run PowerShell like the normal PowerShell for you. It's going to run it. However, I want this PowerShell. So from the command line, in your command line, if you run PowerShell, just like that, it's going to run this version of PowerShell. However, if you run PWSH, it's going to run the latest one for you, right? So I can't use this one out of the box in Power Automate Desktop. I'll have to use the something else. So what I did was opening the command line, and when I want to open the command line, I told it to go to that scripting folder. So that's scripting where my file exists. And once I'm there, I'm just getting the values that I'm getting from Power Automate Desktop. For example, this one, I'm getting the value for the site URL because I don't want to provide like the whole URL, just the end part. So the actual site itself, and I'm appending that to the my tenant, and the site title, I'm just storing that in a variable. This is just like unnecessary step, but I just like did that. Another way that I could have done this is using subflows. So I can have a subflow that's called initialize variables, right? And here you have subflow. You have action called subflow, and I can run the initialize variables. Let's say that you have 20 variables. So you don't want to have like it crowded right here in this area. So you can have just like a subflow special for variables, and you can start, you can just call the subflow right there, right? And I have these two variables. Next, what I'm doing is using this session, the variable that was output from this one, and I'm calling PowerShell provision site my script. And this script accepts parameter called title, and I'm passing the site name, and accepts parameter called URL, and I'm accepting URL. And I would have a custom template with PNP, and then I'm just displaying the site was created, and I'm sending an email. Notice that you can send emails from Power Automate desktop. However, there is a setting that you need to enable in Exchange itself in order to enable Power Automate desktop to do it. If you're not going to be able to do that, then you can just stick with sending emails from Power Automate Cloud. So you can like decide the way you wanna do it, right? So let's see how this works, or let's hope it works. So I'll test and manually save, and my goodness. All right, test. Let's name it demo site test, something I've never tried before, and demo site, just like that. And I'm gonna run this one. Now, when you do stuff like this, the most important thing is to cross your fingers. So this is what makes it works, right? Let's see. All right, so I got a message that says demo site 11 blah, blah, blah. And if I go to the admin center, refresh, and let's go here, let's go newer to older. There it is, test. Was it our one or not yet? No. Let's see. Yeah, probably still working on that template. But yeah, we're gonna also get an email soon that this one was created. Maybe because I have a really big template in there. I'll just try one more time before newer to older. No. Let's try again. I'm not sure if. So let's try it again, shall we? So I'll go here. Was it our one? Provision request? Yeah, that's ours. Provision sites. Demo 111, something like this. I'm sure I've never created a site like that. Demo site and run. Now should work. Weird, maybe I created a site with that previous name before. So let's refresh. I still didn't do like handling for if there's an error between Power Automate and PowerShell. That's my next step. There it is. So yeah, I had the site with that name, demo site 1234, but there it is. But there's so much else that we can do, like handling if there's something that takes place from PowerShell into Power Automate Desktop to have error handling between these two. But yeah, you get the idea and the possibilities in here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I'll be hanging out after the call in the chat. If you have any questions, reach out. You can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me. And don't forget to participate in the quiz and to provide us with your feedback. I hope you learned something new out of this session. And thank you. And thanks again to our sponsors. Don't forget that.
Great. Thank you, Mohamed. Yeah, so are there any other questions? Please feel free to post them in the comment section here so that we can still look at them.
Yep.
But it's nearly lunchtime here in Singapore and Malaysia, so everybody's probably looking forward to having a good lunch break now.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Okay. Yeah, good question. Yeah, how do you know if your workflow actually failed? You just mentioned the error handling, but generally, then how do you know that something didn't work in the end?
You keep refreshing your SharePoint. Yeah.
Exactly. For unattended, yeah. So you can have error handling. So there's you can have like as a try catch in your flow. If something in the flow itself failed, so you can handle it in the flow itself. However, in my case, what I had is I had an issue with Power Automate with an issue on the PowerShell side itself, right? So it wasn't actually a Power Automate desktop thing. So in that case, I'll need to, like I would say, I'll need to run another process in order to handle that situation. So I would think about it as, in case I have an issue with PowerShell, like Power Automate Desktop is just going to do that process for you and that's it. Then in my Power Automate Desktop, if I'm having any issues, then maybe go and notify Power Automate, the orchestrator itself, like the engine itself online, notify it with HTTP request, and Power Automate is going to send me an email, hey, it failed, right? And maybe if that failed, call Power Automate Desktop again with the solution. Like maybe if it failed, send me in an email something like execute the flow again, right? Or send me like to execute, send me a link. You can like send the people a link to a button flow. So send me a link to the button flow and ask me to provide it a different name in the email itself. I click on the email, I launch it again, it's going to go and launch Power Automate Desktop. So Power Automate Desktop is not going to be like handling PowerShell issues because that's like outside of the boundaries of PowerShell itself. It's going to handle stuff on its own. For example, if you tell it to launch Excel file, but you provide it with a wrong path to the Excel file, that it can handle. So it can know, oh, there's an issue. So you can have the error handling. You can have the try, like a sort of like try catch in Power Automate Desktop itself. So if it failed to open browser, if it failed to do something, then it's going to tell you. But PowerShell script executing something outside the boundaries of Power Automate Desktop, you'll need to find a way to handle that.
What if it's something like the internet is down, and you're trying to connect to
That's when you
RPA cloud?
need, yeah. That's when you need to have a machine group. So when you have a machine group, that's going to give you like high availability for your Power Automate Desktop. So you can have like multiple machines, all of them are running Power Automate Desktop. When you're signed into these machines, they all have the same instance of the flows. So in here, like, let me show you something. Where's our, okay. So here in the provision, if I edit this one, notice right here that I am, where's this one? So here I can assign it to a machine, not just I can assign it to a machine, not just a single machine, right? So it can be assigned to a machine. Let me just remember where I was doing that. Probably not from this area. Yeah, I forget where it's done from. Yeah, exactly. So this one, when you add a connection, when you want to add a connection, you can add a connection right here directly to machine, and you can select machine or machine group, right? So you can select one or the other. Here in my case, I selected only one machine, but I don't have a machine group. That's why I wasn't able to select it. But if you have this machine and other like 50 machines as part of a machine group, you're going to be able to select it right here. And when you start using your flow right here, and you say, okay, I want to right now call this flow or this flow, using this connection, it will use that machine group. So if you like, if a machine doesn't have any internet connection or something like that, it would be it would just do it. Otherwise, like this one will just keep on spinning. And if the machine is down in the first place, when you want to assign it here, it's not going to be available for you. That's why when you go there, machines, for example, I have other couple of machines, but they're not showing up right here. This one is busy. Let's just click here. So if I have other machines, they're going to start appearing right here. So right now, if I have like other couple Azure machines, if I run them, they're going to start showing right here, hey, available or something like that, that they're ready to process stuff. You need to only buy a license for the one who's going to use it. That's pretty much it. Not everyone in the company. Anyone that wants to have Power Automate attended, do stuff, interact with it, these people will need to get it. $80 tasks, no. Basically, like what I used Power Automate Desktop with, I've used it like in a couple of projects to automate stuff for legacy applications. So basically, we're dealing with many insurance companies. And these insurance companies, they're using really old applications, like applications when they open, they're going to look like a terminal or something. So just like text on top of a black screen. And the process is you have like in this project, there are two ladies and they open bunch of Excel files, getting data from Excel files, opening this legacy application, writing there. When you discuss it with the clients, they're going to be like, no, we don't want to update it to a real database system with a real user interface. It's going to cost so much on our end. So Power Automate Desktop is that like spot where it's going to be cheap to automate these things without having to redo the whole application from scratch. So it's just like these legacy applications that they don't have APIs to deal with. So this is like where I found the usage. For AD, you have like a bunch of actions for AD, even like for Azure itself, like creating Azure machines, doing all sorts of things with resource groups, but I haven't dealt much with it. Most of like what I've been dealing with is regarding automating desktop applications themselves, like recording what the user is going to do in these. Like there's this application called Titan for insurance stuff. You can just automate it, reading data from Excel, dealing with PDF documents, reading PDF, these sorts of things, right? But yeah, this is like the scope of what I've been dealing with. And I was just testing stuff to see what can be done, like with SharePoint, with automating SharePoint scripts and all of these things. And I found out like possibilities are really great.
All right. How long does it take to learn? Always an interesting question. Yeah, you get started, and it's a never-ending learning thing. Yeah.
It took me between 1-2 months. Yeah, 1 month. 1 month is going to be enough to learn it and get into a project. So when I knew that I'm gonna work on something like it, I went actually like honestly like what I did, because the project first they told me that there's going to be insurance project, and I didn't know if it's going to be Power Automate Desktop or Uipath. So I went first and I studied the whole thing about Power Automate Desktop, and then they said, it's going to be Uipath. So I went in like Uipath, then Power Automate Desktop. So I went into all of this RPA stuff, but I'm coming like from a SharePoint development background, so I'm a SharePoint Microsoft Teams guy, but I enjoyed like these things, so it was easy to learn. Yeah, easier. I would say easier than Power Automate Cloud itself. Even like Power Automate Cloud is really hard, but this it's like dealing with the game, not an actual like technology. So it's really nice.
Okay, and the other question is, can we use it as a web scraper tool?
Yep. So what you can do is you can actually like do that. You can tell it to go to that web page, grab that text, copy that text to your clipboard, and go somewhere else and paste it. Go to that section on a web page, copy it. So you can actually do that.
I've actually seen people use Power BI as a web scraper and automate it using Power Automate. Yeah, I think they're a great combination to do so. But that is depending if the website itself is modern. If it's not modern, then it's kind of tough.
Yeah, like out of all the Power Platform stuff, Power BI is the one that I have like least experience with, and I always like avoid. And for me, like it's just rocket science. Power BI. I don't know. Like I have some issues with visualizations and DAX and all of that stuff. But yeah, if I can do something without Power BI, I would just do it. I would just code my own charts. I know it's not the best thing, but yeah.
Well, as a SharePoint developer, I can tell you Power BI is godsend because we have so much stuff in SharePoint, and Power BI really turns it into like almost a relational database with interactive selection.
Yeah, whenever like I see dashboard and all the buttons on the right hand side to do the charts, pick the value, which one do I pick to make it look like that? It's for me. So
yeah. Anyway, if we don't have any questions, really fun of you to join us.
I think there's one final question for Lotus.
How do you compare it with Uipath and the other UI tools?
So I would say Uipath. I would say like I didn't deal with the Blue Prism, but I would say Uipath is more robust than Power Automate Desktop. Like the number of actions that you have is way more than this one. However, learning curve Power Automate Desktop is way easier than Uipath. Way easier. Like you can learn Power Automate Desktop from, if you just focus on it, really 2 weeks, and you're going to be able to get into a project and like deal with it. Uipath, you need to get their material. You need to get like whenever you look at this UI that we see right here, it's easy to know what's going on. It's easy to know that you have actions on the left. You can drop them here. It's easy to see what's going on. Uipath is just, I don't want to like bash on them, but it's really like hard, much harder than like itself, way harder, like a steeper learning curve, I would say. But yeah, it's more robust. But for the purpose of stuff that I want to do, I find like Power Automate Desktop way, like it's sufficient for me. So I wouldn't need to go and deal with all the ins and outs of Uipath and learn a new technology. And Power Automate Desktop already provides me with the integration with Power Automate Cloud, which is not provided by Uipath. So that's the main advantage. But yeah, the UI I would just I don't prefer looking at Uipath for a long time. I would just prefer Power Automate Desktop. So
Where's the boundary between using the licensed and the non-licensed one?
So when you want to deal with the outside world, so let's say that I want to communicate with Power Automate Cloud. This is where you need to have, like in your Uipath, they have this term called Orchestrator. So they have the Orchestrator, which is where you monitor your flows and so on and so on in Power Automate in your Uipath itself, and then you have the bots, which is the Power Automate Desktop. In Power Automate Desktop in the Microsoft space, this Orchestrator is the is Power Automate Cloud itself. So the Orchestrator itself is Power Automate Cloud, and this is where you're going to say, oh yeah, run this bot for me, run this bot for me, run this, run that, and you're going to be able to monitor stuff all over the place. If you want to do that, like deal with it as an orchestrator and launch new Power Automate Desktop flows, this is where you need to have the license. However, if all you do is just open command line session, copy data from Excel, automate this, automate that, do copy files here, stuff like that, it's all free. If you need that orchestrator, then you'll need to get a license and pay for it.